Welcome to Edge Hill for the evening. It's a film I put together. It's a long story. I'll tell you about it later. Although it's quite a funny story. It was a fun film to make, but more importantly, is before we screen Sometimes, Always, Never, I wanted to introduce you to two student films that were made by students who were in the second year. They're now in the third year. The first one is a documentary made by a very talented young man called Io. It's a brilliant, intriguing documentary that is international in its storytelling, but weirdly is on our doorstep. Watch the film, it'll make sense. It's an international kind of feeling film, and it looks at migration in a very positive way. And it's important that kind of as filmmakers we find voices. And the two films I want to introduce you to tonight both have very strong voices. Io's voice is one of tolerance, of understanding outsiders and understanding immigration and migrant communities. And the other film, which is written by a young woman called Maddie, who's here somewhere, and directed by Remy, who's here somewhere, and Paul was also involved in making the film, who's also here somewhere. It's an interesting short film. It's comedic, but what it does have, which I like a lot, it has a lot of kind of European sensibilities. So although it's shot, probably knowing my students, within 6 foot of this room, no offence. So although it's shot locally, what it does visually is it feels like it's from another place. Again, it has a voice. So the two films I want to introduce you to for the next 14 minutes both have very strong voices. And if filmmaking, I think, is about one thing, it's about voice. We can all make Cash in the Attic if we choose to. For those that watch Cash in the Attic, I quite like it. But these films are about voice. Filmmaking should be about voice. And that's why I want to introduce you to these two rather wonderful films. I'm going to leave you in peace. I'll come back later to bore the living daylights out of you with my old mate Roger. Hope you enjoyed the two student films. Hope you enjoyed this film. Feel free to ask me anything about it later if you want. Equally, if you want to go home, drink Horlicks or brandy, then feel free and do that also. Thank you for coming on a cold night. I do appreciate it. And thanks to Kath and all their team for pulling the evening together. And Roz, who's not here from ICE, and Martin. Big thank you. And I shall see you in about 2 hours. I'd normally go to the pub, but I can't. Thanks.
My name's Roger Shannon, and I'll be doing the Q&A with my colleague at the university, Carl Hunter. So, firstly, a big round of applause for Carl. What a great film.
Are we done?
We're done.
Oh.
Now, before I get Carl talking, just to say a few things about the fact that you've all just watched the film at Edge Hill University. I work at Edge Hill University. Carl's a colleague at Edge Hill University. The associate producer of the film is Claire Heaney, who also works at university, and students from the university crewed on the film, and some of them also work with another colleague, Gary Westhead, to do some of the music that was performed for the film. Also, the screenwriter, Frank Cottrell-Boyce, and Alexi Sale, who's in the film, are honorary doctorees of the university. So now I've got that promotional plug out of the way. I'd like to kick Carl off with some responses, some questions from me, and then I'll get everybody else involved. And while I'm doing that, I want a number of favourite words to be thought of, because we had one in the film, so I can't do it actually. Can someone do it? So I'd like some favourite words to be thought about while we're chatting, and then you can throw them in towards the middle or the end. Now, when Carl introduced the student films, which I thought were fantastic, by the way, and let's give them a round of applause as well. Carl talked about a voice in those films by students. And I particularly think that Carl's work has got a particular voice. And it's one that, to me, doesn't seem to be very British in a way. Although all the locations look very familiar to us, I think you've got a different type of sensibility than we usually get in British films. So I wonder, where those influences are coming from for you.
Well, I'm a big fan of cinema anyway, as I'm sure most people in this room are. But when I started working on that film, I had a question, which was, if you take a script which is very British and you have a very British cast, can you shoot it in a way that doesn't feel British, whatever British means in terms of cinema? So that was kind of, I was trying not to make a very British looking film. Plus also the films I like, Aki Kaurismäki, who's a Finnish director, I'm a huge fan of. So it's kind of more, and Wes Anderson, who I'm a big fan of, and Roy Anderson, in fact anyone called Anderson. Jerry Anderson, I like Jerry Anderson as well.
Yeah, well you could say something about the kind of retro animation at that point.
Yeah.
If you want to.
Oh, big fan, yeah, animation, I'm a huge fan of. But big fan of animation, but I just didn't want a film that looked like a British film. I wanted it to, even the way I shot it in a way in which I'm very interested in the grammar of film. Film as a language, has its own grammar, and there's a particular grammar that interests me. So, for instance, I don't know if you noticed, but there isn't a single close-up of a human anyway in the film. Did you notice that? No? Okay.
They're either wides or two shots, rather than looking at me and then looking at the other person. Yeah.
Well, you see, traditionally, film has a lot of close-ups in it. That's the norm. But I wanted to make a film which kind of dispensed with close-ups. So close-ups are generally there for if an actor or the story has a particular emotional moment, you fill the frame with a person's face to maybe get a stronger idea of what the emotion is. What I was trying to do was see, can I do that without moving the camera closer? So can I make the close-up? Can I do it not optically, but can I just do it through performance? So that's what I did. In fact, on the first day when I was rehearsing, I said to the cast, I've got 3 rules when I shoot this film. One is there's no improvisation, ever. I don't allow improvisation. I like improvisation, I just don't want to do it. Other people do it really well. The other one was, I'm not going to film opening and closing of doors or starting of cars. I'm always amazed by when people shoot scenes and they show the opening and closing of doors. Like if someone's outside the room and then you cut and they're inside the room, I think it's fair to assume they went through a door. It's a kind of, why waste time showing
we see Jenny Agutter open a door though, coming out of the bathroom. Don't we?
No, you don't. No. You assume she does. In fact, Jenny Agutter closes the bathroom door. Yeah. So, and then the third one was, I won't shoot any close-ups. So once I had those 3 rules in place, it was easy. It's quite easy then, and good fun.
You've worked with Frank Cottrell-Boyce now on a number of films, and another feature film, Grow Your Own, a couple of years ago, and then some short films. And this is your debut feature film, which is obviously done incredibly well, and Carl will probably tell us a little bit later in this chat about where he's been on his travels with the film to film festivals, etc. Obviously, Scrabble is a metaphor in this film for grief and loss. Yeah. But it's the first film I've seen that actually has Scrabble as a core feature in the film. I don't know whether anybody else has got a board game they can remember which is in a movie. Shout out if you can. But working with Frank, do you work with a finished script that he's completed, or do you work alongside him so you're kind of conjuring up the visual look as he's writing it?
Frank is an absolute brilliant collaborator. and he wants to collaborate. He's a fantastic writer, but he's also incredibly generous as a person and as a writer. So he quite likes, and quite often, he would say, pop round. He makes very good homemade soup and stock. If you're interested in chicken stock or beef stock.
Not Marmite, though.
No. I have to tell you about that in a minute. So Frank invites me around to the house a lot. We are old friends. And he would cook. So he'd be like making soup. And while he's making soup, we chat about scripts and ideas. And by the time you leave his house, the script's moved on. Although I often think, did we do anything, or did we just eat soup and have a laugh? And then later you realise, oh no, actually, he very cleverly has put something together without me realising it. No, Frank is a collaborator, but Frank is a great, great lover of images. So he enjoys it. If I turn up with a handful of Polaroids that I've taken, or drawings or art or anything, and I take it to him and say, I really like these images. Frank loves that, and he'll often say, I really like them as well. I wonder if actually in that scene, what if we based it around that image? And then he would use the image. There's a word for that. Reverse ekphrasis, is that right?
I've got a dictionary here, I'll just check.
You'll get 36 for it in Scrabble.
So his writing is then responding to your visual input as he's going along, so you're backwards and forwards in that way. Yeah.
I mean, it's Frank's script, it's not my script, and he's the generator of the idea. But he likes to collaborate, and he enjoys if you turn up with a collection of images.
But I found that there's a wonderful connection between the screenplay from Frank and your whimsical, retro-looking visual style.
Yeah.
There seems to be a really nice, close fit. And I think the way that you've described the collaboration sort of indicates how that comes about with the writer. But I also wanted to ask you about the cast.
Yeah.
What a great cast.
Oh, yeah, brilliant, yeah, absolutely.
Bill
brilliant.
Nighy, Jenny Agutter, Sam Riley, Alexei Sale. Who have I missed out?
Alice Lowe.
Alice Lowe.
Yeah.
So how did they respond to your approach, no close-ups?
Most of them were fine, one or two of them. They didn't say it to me on the day, but after the film was finished, and I went to a few screenings, they would say, because it'd be the first time they've seen the finished film, and they would go, we were really worried that you weren't going to shoot close-ups, but now we're not really worried. In fact, Alice Lowe, he was an absolute joy to work with. She said to me later on that she was quite nervous about the idea of not shooting close-ups, but after she'd seen the film, she then said, I get it now, I get why you let us act, you let us do what we're meant to be doing. So, I mean, it was a gamble, but, it was a gamble that paid off, I think. Well, I think so.
It certainly did. Well, let's find out if it did pay off with responses from our audience, the audience. If you want to ask a question, just give us a wave, and then there's a roving mic. And let's know your favourite word before you ask the question.
Well, that's us. Melancholy. Because that's sad, but also something quite useful at the same time. Anyway, forgive me if the question isn't very specific, but what do you think that the film said about fatherhood and experiences of fatherhood?
What a great question.
I think from a script point of view, from a storytelling point of view, the one thing I was adamant, as was Frank from day one, is I've no interest in making films which are pessimistic. I only want to make films which are optimistic. I have no time for pessimism as a filmmaker. I mean, other people do it really well, and that's great. I have no interest in making pessimistic films. They're the stock trade of the middle classes. I think pessimistic films, but that's just my opinion. Not sure I can prove it. I could try. Now I want to make optimistic films like Bill Forsyth, who I'm a huge fan of. So what the film's saying really is that no matter how bad things are, no matter how awful the situation is, there is always hope. That's what I like to think. So in that situation there, it's not so much a comment on fatherhood, it's a comment on family. And what it's saying is, this situation is unbearable and completely awful. But if you have to move on. And that's one of the clever things that Frank did with the script, was when Bill's searching for his missing son, actually his missing son lives around the corner. He sees him every day. That's his real missing son. The other lad, unfortunately, probably has gone forever. And that's a tragic and terrible thing to deal with. But you can't make that kid come back. And you probably can't find him. But you can find your other missing son, because he only lives, a street away. Go and find him. If you find him, then you'll start to come to some kind of healing will take place. So I get your question, but it's less a comment on kind of fatherhood, but more on kind of family and on hope as well. Is that? Yeah, okay.
Right at the back.
It's interesting your comments are echoing Jane Austen's work. She didn't want to write pessimistic stories.
Yeah.
It sounded quite interesting that you echoed the woman from that time ago. Your aesthetic really.
Yeah.
Quite nice.
But also, I mean, other people do it really well and it makes a lot of money. But I don't want to make a film that makes people miserable. Because I don't want to be miserable. So why would I want to spend a year making something that's miserable? That makes you miserable? Give me comedy any day. Or, yeah, comedy. I could do Carry On Edge Hill, maybe.
There's one question.
How Scouse is Bill Nye in real life?
Bill's not Scouse at all. Bill's from down south. But he did spend 7 years at the Everyman Theatre in Rep. And he loves Liverpool. And he loves Liverpool. And then when we were making the film, Bill suggested, he said, because the other thing was, I didn't want to make a Liverpool film. I wanted to make a Merseyside film. Again, there are a lot of Liverpool films made. But no one really makes a Merseyside film. And what I like about Merseyside is, one is it's quite big, but also you have accents which go from a very strong Liverpool accent through to kind
like
of semi-Lancashire, yeah. And I like that. I like that kind of variation. Yeah.
He does a good job, doesn't he?
Yeah. Well, what he did, he suggested about doing a Liverpool accent. And I thought, yeah, great idea. So he said, I'll be in touch. And I arranged to meet him. And he'd learned five different accents. Liverpool has many accents, but he'd learned 5. And I spent an afternoon and he tested them. He said, what do you think of this one? What do you think of this one? And that was the one I said, that's it. Wherever that accent is, I think that's what you should go for. But he's very good at accents in general, I have to say. I've heard him do many accents. But he has a good ear to mimic Bill. He's very good at it. Lovely man to work with, by the way. Absolutely delightful.
Before I bring anyone out, could you talk a bit about the music in the film? Because obviously with your background as a musician and continuing musician with the farm, that must be something that's quite personal for you regarding the films that you make.
Yeah.
There's quite an evocative indie sound in the film. So do you want to talk a little bit about your approach to the music and who you got involved to do that?
Yeah, well, when films need a soundtrack or a score, this one being no exception. But from day one, I wanted Edwyn Collins. Do you know Edwyn Collins, by the way? Do you remember Orange Juice? I'm a huge fan of Edwyn Collins and Orange Juice. But I always wanted Edwyn Collins to do the soundtrack. And I was partly out of, I saw a film a number of years ago called Submarine, which I loved. And the soundtrack was written by Alex Turner, who is in the Arctic Monkeys. And I loved the idea that a pop writer does like a score for a film. So, and I'm a huge fan of Edwyn, so I got in touch with Edwyn and said, I'm making a feature film. It needs a soundtrack. Would you be interested in doing the soundtrack? And he said, yeah, he'd love to. So then this lovely journey started working with Edwyn. And Edwin drafted in 2 other people to work with, Sean Reed and Che, who's actually my son. And the 3 of them disappeared like 3 musical wombles into the Outer Hebrides, and wrote that score and songs. The other thing is I wanted songs in the film, and I said to Edwin, which has become quite a funny story, I said, I need a song in the film. You know, at the end where they're on the beach and Sam plays a riff and then they sing that wonderful song. Well, did you notice that riff appears throughout the film a few times? You hear it a number of times. Then eventually it's part of a song. And I said to Edwin, I need a song that ends the film, but it has to be so memorable, so catchy, that after you've heard it once, you'll feel like you'll sing it for the rest of your life. And Edwin says, do you mean write a hit? Which of course is exactly what I meant, without realising it. And I said, oh yeah, sorry about that, yeah. And he said, well, basically leave it with me. And then a couple of weeks later, he sent me a demo, and it was that song. And I played it. After about a minute of playing it, I just thought I'll be singing that forever. You know, the music's great. I love the score. It's an absolutely brilliant score. And the 3 of them, Che, Edwin and Sean, Edwin's studio is 2 hours north drive of Inverness. It's quite close to Wick. It's on the coast. It's a beautiful recording studio. And Edwin collects a lot of vintage instruments and recording equipment, and he's quite obsessed with it, and he knows it inside out. And his studio is like, it's just like the greatest toy shop you've ever been in. I loved going there. You know, I just sit there, mainly drinking his beer from his fridge, while the 3 of them produced this wonderful soundtrack. And my job was to sit there and just go yes or no. Do you like this? Kind of, but I think it's a bit too fast there. And okay, I go back to the fridge, pour another beer, come back and they go, you mean like this? And I go, yeah, perfect. So it wasn't...
Sounds a wonderful way of making a movie. Yeah,
it wasn't hard work. And then also, you know, when you're a big fan of a band, it's also nice to then, at the end of the day, Edwin's wife, Grace, who's absolutely wonderful, wonderful person, she'd cook dinner every night. So it'd be me, Che, Sean, Edwin and Grace, and we'd have our dinner and our beer. And then, of course, I'd just start talking about orange juice, which I'm sure he's sick of hearing, but I was a big fan.
Why not?
But it was good. They were a log fire on, steak and kidney pie, bottle of ale.
God, well, let's hope you can keep making films in that way.
Let's hope so.
On the corner here?
Yeah.
Were there any budgetary constraints? Were you constrained by the budget you had to work with?
Well, the budget was $2.5 million. So it was an okay budget. It's still low for kind of British independent cinema. But in a way, it was kind of all right, actually. An extra week photography would have helped. But having said that, no, it was kind of okay. There was a bit of a punk rockness to it, in terms of things had to be done a lot quicker than you'd normally do when you shoot a film. But the thing is, I had a cast who were brilliant, but I also had a crew who were brilliant. And if you've got a brilliant cast and a brilliant crew, then things do move actually much more quickly than you think they're going to do. And then when you've got people like, say, Bill or Alice or Sam, or Bill can learn pages and pages and pages of dialogue, and in one take do it, and he won't fluff a line. So working with Bill and Sam, most of the film is Bill and Sam, and there's a lot of dialogue, but a lot of the dialogue that you look at on the screen and when you hear it, I did shoot it a few times to get a different type of performance, but on each take they didn't drop a line, hardly ever. But whereas if I was working with other actors who maybe struggle with a lot of dialogue, then I think I would have been in a lot of trouble, because as that deadline, as the end of the day is moving closer, I think I'd have been panicking, because how do we shoot that amount of dialogue when you've got to go, cut, let's go again, cut, let's go again. But with Bill and Sam, they just didn't drop a line. They were the 2 of them together are an absolutely brilliant double act. and hopefully we'll be again soon. Fingers
More
crossed.
on that.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit
Yeah.
about the response to the film, let's say beyond the UK, because the film was in the cinemas, it had a release in the UK, etc. But you've been travelling to, I don't know how many festivals, because every week you seem to be off to Toronto or Holland or somewhere else. So how's the reaction to the film gone in other places where perhaps the audiences might be expecting a certain type of British film, either a costume drama, as Carol mentioned, or a Ken Loach type film, which seems to be the two types of British films that travel. But yours is different than those. So how was it received in those other festivals?
It's received really well. In fact, all the festivals it's played at, it's sold out. In fact, I was in Holland on Sunday for 15 hours. I had to arrive there I got there about 4. Then the screening was, I had to introduce the film at 6. Then the film played. I went to the bar, came back, did a Q&A, went back to the bar, went to bed, got up next morning, and then flew to here to teach. So I was in a place called Leiden, which is the home of Rembrandt, for a few hours. But no, it's received really well. In America, it played. Its premiere was in at Cinequest, which is in San Jose. That's a massive theatre. I think the size of, say, the Philharmonic Hall. It sold that out. It sold out in Toronto. It sold out 3 nights in Holland at the Leiden Film Festival. And then the 4th night, which is the night I went, that was an additional night because the demand was so high. So, and in a weird way, because of the way I've shot it, because it has a kind of, it doesn't feel like a British film, that works better actually in other countries, I think. I mean, I don't know that as a fact, but I do get the impression. It's like in Canada, for instance, like here, I'm a big fan, as I mentioned, of Aki Kaurismäki. But when I mention that in interviews here, it's largely kind of, well, it's not ignored, it's not really mentioned because maybe it's a bit of a kind of niche kind of director to know. But he has a bigger fan base in Canada. So for instance, in Canada...
So just say, connect your film with his name and then people are interested. And also, I suppose, Bill Nighy is an actor who is known internationally for a number of films. And so his name will carry the film forward.
Yeah, he's very popular, very,
So have we got a couple more questions before there's 2 over here,
Yeah, Well, Jenny was that particular part. There was another actor who was lined up for it, and I won't mention the name, but this person had suffered a tragedy in her family, which meant she couldn't do the film. And then Bill says, "Have you thought about Jenny Agutter?" And I thought, wow, that's a great idea. But anyway, I don't know it, and I could get in touch with her agents and start that ball rolling. But time was running out, so Bill knows her anyway. So he made that initial contact. We sent Jenny the script. She loved it, and then 4 days later she was in the film, and then I was rehearsing with her, and then I was shooting with her. But she was she's an absolutely brilliant laugh to film with. She's very funny. You know, like Jenny's got this wonderful, this accent which is, when I say posh, I don't mean that in a negative way about it.
It's a bit cut glass, our accent, isn't it?
Yeah, but she's also incredibly funny. And her mum and dad are from St Helens, which I never knew. So she's got a real love of kind of this part of the world because her mum and dad, that's where they're from. But no, she's very quick, and she's actually very comedic. Like in between takes, when you're having a cup of tea and waiting to do the next scene, and she'll come over and have a chat to you. But she's very jokey and very, she's just a very pleasant person. Yeah. No, I enjoyed working with her. I'd do it again. She was great fun. Yeah.
The question behind?
I don't know. Frank did write a short story for an organisation called The Reader, which is in Culdeston's Park. And it was called Triple Word Score. And that was a long time ago. And I read the short story and loved it. And then thought, maybe this would make a film. So then Frank started work, turning the short story, adapting it into a screenplay. So it's not based on anything, but it's... I think that's down to Frank as a writer, I think. He's a brilliant writer, but he has that complete ability to... I think his writing will always make you feel like that. But since that film's been made, weirdly enough, those situations crop up. There's a one, I can't mention his name, but there's one I know from Liverpool, who I bumped into a little bit around Liverpool. And he's quite a kind of... He's a bit older than me, and he's quite a kind of tough old character. And then one night I was in a pub with him, and he was crying. And I was thinking, there's this man who's like, he looks like he's made of rock. I said, you all right? He said, yes, I saw your film, and I just love it. You know, I thought it was a great film. I was obviously very flattered, and it's a very kind comment. And then he says, my older brother went missing, it's like 20, 30 years ago, whatever it was. And he said, to this day, I still walk around Liverpool every night, checking every homeless person, just in case it's him. And I just, you know, when at that moment, you think, wow. You know, and then someone told me yesterday as well, the day before. I don't watch Coronation Street, so forgive me, I don't know names or I don't watch it. But there's a storyline in Coronation Street where there's a character who's searching for his brother via online Scrabble. That's like this week or something, or last week. But
Life imitating art.
Yeah, yeah. So someone at Corrie must have seen our film and robbed the idea.
Sue them.
Yes.
Sue them.
Yeah. Oh, I'm flattered. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, flattered, but yeah, so Corrie's robbed our idea.
Well, we're sort of getting to the... Oh, yeah, like one last one, yeah.
I very enjoyed it. It was a great film. Well, I'm interested to find out what the inspiration was for the costumes and sets, because I thought that made it special for me.
Well, the inspiration, I suppose, for the set, the film's a contemporary film, but what I was trying to do, metaphorically, is you've got a family who are trapped in the past through grief. So what I was trying to do with you, again, only you can tell me if I succeeded or failed, but the idea is that as you watch that film, you know it's present day, but somehow you're thinking, but it also feels like the past. And that's what I was trying to do, is those two characters, Sam and Bill, are trapped in the past through grief. Hence why I used, you know, when the car, you have a back projection. It's ridiculous. I mean, years ago in the 50s and 60s, that's what you would do. Of course, things have moved on, and you would use a green screen, or what's called a low loader, if you want to make it look real. But I don't want to make it look real. I had no intentions of trying to convince you that they were really in a car. That's not my intention at all. My intention is for you to go, that can't be real. It's almost cartoon-like. And that's about the situation, is the situation is real, but they can't believe it. So it's kind of, I suppose it's kind of, yeah, visual metaphors, you know. But whether I'm successful, I say, I don't know, and, you know, only you can tell me by booing or applauding, whichever.
Well, I'm sure you'd all like to thank Carl for introducing and discussing this film this evening in such a great way. Thank you, Carl.
Well, thank you. And
before we finish, I've got something for Carl. He doesn't know he's going to get this, but it's my little Eamon Andrews, this is your life moment, because...
Well, it's a redundancy letter.
It's not your P45. I was mooching around my Oxfam bookshop at the weekend, and I came across a book, and I thought, I must get that for Carl, and I'll give it to him when we do the Q&A. So if you'd like to open it.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a little gift to thank him for.
All right. I'm intrigued.
And it's not the budget for your next film.
Yeah, Oh, I've never read Readers' Wives. I don't know what that is. It's called The Farm. Thank you, Roger. Incidentally,
It's the original Ladybird. It's not one of your retro hipster reboots.
Thank you. I'm very touched. Thank you. Just a quick note. Going back in time, the very first thing I ever made, I directed for television, which was for Channel 4. But Roger was the exec producer on it. And then I made another film for Channel 4, and Roger was the exec on that. So we go back a long way. And my first introduction to filmmaking for a broadcaster actually was because of Roger. So the reason I'm sat here talking about a film, bizarrely, my journey starts with Roger. Weirdly. So,
And it's a complete accident. We're both polka dotting today.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.